"You're a leech. You can't stay here after New Year's." Maris said it while carving the glazed ham I bought. Her voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. It was flat, measured, like she'd rehearsed it. My fork hovered midair, suspended over the plate of mashed sweet potatoes I had spent the morning preparing. Across the table, my son Damon cleared his throat, but said nothing. He didn't look at me. The room didn't react. My granddaughter asked for more cranberry sauce. Someone laughed at a joke from the other end of the table. It was like I'd gone mute, or invisible. I set my fork down slowly. The napkin on my lap was embroidered, also bought with my money from a sale last spring. The chair I sat in, I'd ordered it during the pandemic back when their old ones had started creaking and peeling. I looked around at the people I fed, clothed, and quietly carried for 2 years, and no one looked back. I stood, calmly, deliberately. I didn't cry. I didn't ask why. I didn't remind them who paid the internet bill or who kept the thermostat warm enough for Maris to walk around barefoot in winter. I walked to the hallway, picked up the small red gift bag I had placed under the tree. It had my name on the tag, but no one had opened it. They wouldn't. Back in my room, I set the bag on my bed. Inside, it was a handmade ornament with their initials carved into birch. I had ordered it on Etsy 3 weeks ago. The receipt was still in my email. So was the last heating bill. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor for a long time. Not in shock, but in recognition. They hadn't changed. I had just stopped pretending not to see it. After everyone went to bed, I walked the house slowly. Not to say goodbye, but to remember what I was walking away from. The kitchen light was still on. Maris had left her wine glass in the sink. The same glass from the set I bought last Mother's Day, because she had dropped one of hers and cried about the incomplete aesthetic. I opened the cabinet. The new blender sat gleaming where the old one used to rattle. I'd ordered it when she complained about her smoothies being too chunky. Down the hallway, the glow from the modem blinked softly. Wi-Fi registered under my name. The power set on autopay from my checking account since their shutoff notice in April. I never told them I saw it. I just called the utility company and set it to recurring. In the guest bathroom, the light buzzed faintly. I opened the medicine cabinet and stared at the prescription bottle with Maris's name on it. The one she told me was for a sinus issue. But 2 weeks ago, I overheard her whispering on the phone, giggling about her Christmas lips. It wasn't sinus medication. It was cosmetic filler. Covered under the family insurance plan, the one I added her to when she didn't qualify through her part-time job. I checked the thermostat on my way back to the living room. 73 degrees. Warm enough for her to walk barefoot and complain it was still drafty. Damon had said it wouldn't be forever, just until he found a new job. Then it became just until Maris finishes her training. Then it became normal. It had been 2 years. 2 years of groceries. 2 years of preschool tuition for my granddaughter on my card. 2 years of subtle disappearances, my agency, my say, my seat at the table. Now I stood in the doorway of the living room, watching the blinking lights on the tree flicker through the garland. Even the tree skirt was mine, purchased on clearance. In the corner, I spotted the heating bill, opened, unpaid. I picked it up and carried it with me straight to my room. I found it by accident. A manila folder wedged between a pile of mismatched towels and an unopened bottle of detergent. I was looking for the lint roller. I pulled it out gently, thinking it was just another one of Damon's mail stash's receipts or appliance warranties, but the label stopped me. Petition for evaluation. Proposed guardian Damon Vaughn. I opened it with hands that already knew. Inside were draft forms. A petition to declare me mentally declining. Unable to manage household decisions. Emotionally unstable. The date on the cover letter was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks. 2 weeks before Maris told me I could no longer stay. 2 weeks before I paid December's property tax in full, as I always did. They were waiting. Not for me to leave, for the mortgage to clear, for the utilities to reset, for January when everything they needed from me would already be paid. I should have felt shocked. I should have collapsed. But I didn't. I just stood there, quiet. Because when you've spent enough time being tolerated instead of loved, nothing they do surprises you anymore. I carried the folder to my room and placed it on the bed beside the gift bag. Then I opened my laptop. Bank account, internet service, gas, water, electric. One by one, I opened each tab and clicked cancel. I removed my name as authorized user. I closed the autopay links. I stared at the cancellation confirmation screens like they were blinking lights on a lifeboat. My phone buzzed once. A text from Damon. Don't forget the insurance renewal is due on the 27th. Can you handle that again? I didn't reply. I didn't even laugh. I simply screenshotted the text. Then dragged it into the folder next to the petition he thought I'd never find. The only thing left to do was pack. There was a knock at my door just after 9. Damon didn't wait for an answer before stepping inside. I hope you're not planning to make a scene, he said. Maris is already on edge, and it's Christmas. I looked up from my suitcase halfway packed. His eyes darted to the open drawers, the folded sweaters, the manila folder now tucked under a stack of receipts. This doesn't have to be dramatic, he added softer. I said nothing. He cleared his throat. You know this isn't personal. We just need the space. We're trying to get things in order for the new year. I could have reminded him whose name was still on the gas bill, or that the fridge they stocked so casually with wine and cheese had been replaced using my retirement fund. But I didn't, because this conversation wasn't about facts. It was about what he thought I wouldn't say out loud. He left quickly, closing the door behind him with the same careful quiet he used when the kids were sleeping. 10 minutes later, I stepped into the hallway. Maris passed by, smiling at something on her phone. She didn't acknowledge me. In the living room, their daughter. My granddaughter was sitting cross-legged by the fireplace, lining up cookies for Santa. She looked up at me with big eyes and asked Grandma, "Why don't you have a stocking?" My mouth went dry. "I forgot to hang one," I said gently. She nodded and went back to her cookies. But I hadn't forgotten. There was never one made for me. Last year, Maris had ordered embroidered stockings for everyone in the house, even the dog. She said the mantle only fits 4. When the 5th stocking arrived in the mail mine, it never made it out of the box. I left it in my closet, still wrapped. I walked past the fireplace now and saw 4 stockings hanging in perfect symmetry. Names stitched in gold thread. Elira was never one of them. By noon on the 26th, I had packed what mattered and nothing more. I loaded my car with 2 suitcases, a box of files, and the red gift bag they never opened. I didn't leave a note, just canceled the last auto payment, locked the front door, and drove. 2 hours later, I pulled into Lula's driveway. She was already waiting on the porch with 2 mugs of coffee, her hair tied up like she always wore it when something serious needed fixing. I hadn't told her the details, just texted, "Can I come by?" She didn't ask for an explanation. She just opened the door and said, "You're home safe now." We sat in her kitchen. The scent of strong coffee filled the room, and for the first time in days, my shoulders lowered. It took me 2 sips to find the words. I told her everything. What Maris said. What Damon didn't say. The petition in the laundry cabinet. The stocking that never was. The bills. The folder. The lies. Lula didn't interrupt. She didn't try to make it better. She just listened. And when I finished, she reached over and squeezed my hand. "My guest room's yours. No timeline, no rules. Just rest." That night, I opened my laptop and did what I should have done months ago. I opened a new bank account at a credit union downtown. Transferred every cent from the old one, filed a fraud alert, changed every password, called my credit card company and told them to flag any attempts from my old zip code. Then I called the insurance rep and told her to remove Damon's family from my plan. No tears, No guilt. Just business. The kind they always said I wasn't smart enough to handle. By morning, everything tied to that house had been severed. And as Lula handed me the spare key to her place, I knew something had shifted. They had called me weak, but I was the one who turned the lights off. And tomorrow, they'd find out just how dark that house could get without me. I didn't need to be there to know how it unfolded. It started with the Wi-Fi. Damon had a virtual client meeting scheduled that morning. I imagined him sitting at the dining table in his pressed shirt and pajama pants, classic remote work uniform, just as the screen froze. No connection. Then came the thermostat. The smart system Maris insisted on had defaulted to factory settings after the app disconnected. Without access to the main account, my account, they couldn't adjust a thing. By noon, the house was cold. At 2:17 p.m., Maris called her pharmacy. The refill was denied. No coverage. Her voice must have gotten sharp. She always got sharp when things didn't go her way. But there was no mistake. They were no longer on the plan. At 3:02 p.m., my phone buzzed once. Damon, then Maris. I didn't open either message. The next one I did see was public. A screenshot Lula showed me on her tablet while we folded laundry. Maurice had posted in a local community group, "Urgent, can someone explain how to turn power back on if you're not the account holder?" I read it 3 times. No context, no humility. Just the panic of someone realizing the lights were never theirs to begin with. At 5:11 p.m., I received a longer text from Damon. "We need to talk. This is childish." I stared at the screen, then tapped and held the message. Block number. By sundown, the silence felt cleaner than anything they'd ever offered me in that house. They thought they'd removed me. But I was never just a presence in their home. I was the foundation. Now they'd live in the version they built without me, cold, disconnected, and offline. I took another sip of Lula's coffee and opened my laptop. It was time to write something of my own, starting with a letter to someone who once told me to come find her if I ever needed help getting back on my feet. I got the call from Lula while I was buying groceries. "He's in your car," she said flatly. "Damon. He just pulled into the driveway with it." I didn't ask how he got the key. I already knew. There was a spare tucked behind the panel in the laundry room. I'd put it there years ago in case of emergencies. Apparently, this qualified. When I got back, the car was still parked in Lula's drive like it belonged there. Damon stood beside it, arms crossed like a teenager, waiting to be reprimanded. "I figured you wouldn't mind," he said. "It's not like you're really using it. It belongs to the family anyway." The words landed with a thud. I didn't argue. I simply stepped inside, opened the folder where I kept my records, and pulled out the title. My name, clear as day. No co-signers, no family. I called the police. When the officer arrived, Damon was still leaning against the hood, trying to look casual. "Sir," the officer said, after I handed him the paperwork, "this vehicle is registered solely to Ms. Vaughn. I'm going to need you to return the keys." Damon scoffed. "I let her live in my house. We covered her groceries, her meds, everything, and now she's turning her back on us." The officer didn't flinch. "I understand, but unless you have legal ownership of this car, I'm going to ask you one last time." A pause. Then Damon reached into his coat and dropped the keys into the officer's hand. The silence that followed was thick. Neighbors had started to gather on their porches, pretending to sweep to water shrubs to check mail. No one said a word, but I could feel it, the shift. He walked away without looking back. And as I slid into the driver's seat, the leather still warm from his body, I felt something settle. Not revenge, not triumph, just return. Back to what was mine, back to what they thought I'd never fight for. It was Lula's nephew Jordan who tipped me off. He worked part-time at a repair counter near 4th and Main, just a few blocks from a pawn shop, known for being discreet. He'd gone in looking for a vintage lens, and instead found something else my camera. He sent a picture. It was unmistakable. A scratch near the shutter, the same model bag I'd kept it in, even the lens cap with the initials I'd engraved myself. The shop owner said the camera was brought in along with an old laptop. I felt a cold settle in my chest. I found the receipts complete with serial numbers. Then I drove straight to the precinct. The woman at the front desk directed me to Officer Hodge. I handed over the paperwork, answered his questions, and waited. 3 days later, he called back. "We've recovered both items," he said. The pawn shop confirmed who dropped them off. Her ID was on the intake form, and we have security footage. I didn't ask to see it. I didn't need to. An hour after the call, my phone buzzed. "Maris, we needed to cover groceries. You owe us anyway." That was the last straw. Not because she took things, not even because she lied about it, but because she truly believed I still owed her something. That after all the bills, the food, the mortgage payments, the medical insurance, for which she used fillers and called them sinus procedures, she still felt entitled to take what was mine. I tapped the message, held my finger, blocked the number. Then I opened my notebook, crossed out the word receipts, and wrote evidence. They didn't just steal. They expected I'd stay quiet. And that's the part that would sting most when the next officer knocked on their door. It was quiet when I stepped into the courthouse. Not the kind of silence that comes from fear, but the kind that settles over you when you know you're doing the right thing, even if it took too long to get here. The paperwork was thick. I'd brought everything: copies of loan transfers, joint payments, the insurance statements with my name, even the deed addendum Damon signed when we refinanced the house 2 years ago. The clerk glanced at the stack and raised her eyebrows. "You came prepared?" she said. Yes, I did. Restraining orders were filed first. The theft, the harassment, the damage to my car door, all documented. Officer Hodge submitted his statement. Then came small claims court. Damon and Maris showed up looking tired. He wore the same blazer he used to interview in years ago. She kept her sunglasses on even inside the hearing room. They didn't say much. I didn't need them to. The documents spoke louder than any plea they could make. Bank records showing transfers from my personal account to their mortgage. The email where Damon wrote, "Thanks for covering this month again, lifesaver." The judge reviewed it all, carefully, quietly, then looked over the rim of her glasses and said, "This establishes partial ownership. I'm awarding the plaintiff legal rights to 50% of the property." I didn't flinch. I didn't smile. I just nodded. Outside the courthouse, Damon tried to talk to me. "You could move back. We can figure this out." But I wasn't looking for a room. I was looking for peace. 3 weeks later, I sold my share to a developer quietly. The contract was simple. Fast close. Full cash. The buyer wanted to flip the house and didn't need sentimental attachments. On March the 2nd, the eviction notice went out. Not from me. From a company. But when Maurice posted about it online, calling it sudden, I didn't comment. Let them keep the story that I disappeared. Because I didn't. I just finally stepped out from behind their curtain and pulled it down behind me. 3 months later, my new apartment isn't big. No grand dining table. No fireplace mantle lined with stockings. But it's mine. My mugs, my blankets, my keys. On Sunday afternoon, there's a knock. I open the door to find Tessa holding a tin of cookies in both hands, her cheeks pink from the cold. Damon isn't with her Maris either. Just Lula waiting in the car downstairs. "I made you these," Tessa says quietly. "With Mom. I told her I wanted to give them to you myself." I let her in her little boots, squeaking against the floor. She walks around like the place is a secret fort, studying everything. "You don't have a tree?" she asks. "No," I say, smiling, "but I've got lights." I click the switch. The string of warm bulbs along the window frame flickers on, casting a soft glow across the room. She gasps, delighted. We sit at the kitchen table. She eats one of her own cookies and tells me about her school's winter program. Do you miss the big house? She asks after a while. I sip my coffee. I miss some of the memories. But this place, it's better. Tessa looks at the lights again. It feels like you're not afraid here. I pause. I'm not. Before she leaves, she pulls something from her coat pocket. A piece of folded paper, her drawing. Crayons, crooked stars, and two people, one tall, one small. Both smiling under a window of twinkling lights. This is your stocking, she says, pointing to the shape taped above the fireplace in her picture. Next year, I'll hang it up for real. I kneel to hug her. She smells like cinnamon and crayon wax. As she disappears down the hallway, hand in hand with Lula, I pin the drawing to my fridge. This home may be small, but it was built with love, not permission.